Our next presentation will come from Andreas Andersson, the CEO of Intervacc. So, Andreas, the stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and here to listen to us and taking this time. I'm the CEO of Intervacc, and we are developing the next generation of animal health vaccines. We've also been selling vaccines for 30 years through our daughter company. So we know this business quite well. We're listed on the First North growth market. And I would like to start to talk about this. Our vaccine, Strangles, it's against Strangles that affects horses. And it's on track to be submitted to EMA by the end of the year. And I think this is quite unique. It's a fantastic opportunity for me to join this company at this time when we are about to prepare for a market launch. So a small company, a small biotech company like us, launching our own vaccine. I think that's we're really excited about that and something that we are very proud of. But let's take a step back first and talk a little bit about the animal health market and where we are in the animal health market sphere. So the vaccines are in the center of two growing animal health sectors. So you have companion animals and you have farm animals, or sometimes called production animals. So companion animals are cats and dogs and also horses. And farm animals are dairy cows and chickens and pigs. And this business is growing healthy with 4 to 6% annually. It attracts a lot of new industries that's coming into this sector. But what we call the core animal health, which is basically pharmaceuticals, and that's where we fit in as vaccine manufacturers, it's about $35 billion per year, with a growth of 4 to 6%. And vaccine is growing faster than this. Vaccines are growing at 6 to 9%. So it's a really nice position to be in. And the main growth factors here is that for companion animals is that we're treating our pets more as family members, and we're spending more on our pets. And for farm animals and production animals is that the demand for animal protein is increasing in the form of meat and dairy products and eggs and such. Also, it's driven by technological innovation, so more treatments are becoming available, such as our type of vaccines. So all in all, this is a really nice environment to be positioned in. And we're right in the center of this. The animal health is dominated by 5 global large players, soon to be 4, as Elanco, who's number 4 there, has just last week announced that they will acquire a Bayer animal health part and become the second largest player in the animal health marketplace. So it's Zoetis, Elanco, Boehringer Ingelheim, and Merck. And those 4 companies have a turnover of $4 to $6 billion per year. So it's a really lively marketplace where there's a lot of consolidation and mergers and acquisitions going on. It's also interesting, Seva, who also earlier this year in the summer acquired the IDT animal health vaccine business. So those largest players, they control 75% of the market. But there's a lot of innovation and a lot of companies that are moving into the sector like ourselves. So it's a lively, healthy growth industry. And it's also a really positive regulatory climate. There's a lot of initiatives from world organizations like WHO and globally governments that are that are pushing animal health. And it's you can basically say it's this initiative that they call One Health, that human health, animal health, and the environment is all connected. And in order to create a better environment for all, we need to look at this as one connected sphere. And most diseases that are affecting us as humans, they develop in animals and then they move over to humans. One big part of this is also the fight against the antibiotic resistance bacteria. That is really, really important and has gotten a lot of attention as one of the problematic areas for mankind. And traditionally, there's been a lot of overuse of antibiotics within animal health and production of farm animals. And this is also fighting the regulatory with new regulations so that the use of antibiotics will decrease. And it has decreased. It's really low in the Scandinavia, but globally is still high. And when the use of antibiotics go down, you can see as an alternative, vaccines are one of the most important tools. And so what this means is that when we deal with regulatory, or it's a very friendly environment, it's very helpful, and like EMA, they have programs where they are internally saying, how can we push out more vaccines within animal health? And it also means that we can get incentives, and our research program have received incentives in form of grants. And here's just an example from this is some in the US in the end of the year last year. The FDA reported that there is also now in the US a major drop in the use of antibiotics for food animals. And we can see how in Europe, in the large country, this is going down, and at the same time you can see that the use of vaccines are going up. And in Europe, vaccines are now the biggest product for food producing animals, with about 30% of the business in Europe. And that's where the world is heading. So we're in a nice position. We are helped by a lot of global trends, and that's driving our growth. It also feels good from a personal level to be working with something that is very positive. So let's spend a little bit of time on going into more details on what we're doing. So we are creating vaccines using some technology that we say is fusions of recombinant proteins. So traditionally, when you make a vaccine, you often use a whole bacteria, and then you weaken that bacteria in one way or another, and then you use that as a component in the vaccine. Now, what we do is that we analyze and work with the surface structures and the proteins of those bacteria, and then we choose those proteins that gives the best immune response. And then we take the DNA structure and synthesize DNA from those proteins that we choose, make a fusion of those, and then we produce those molecules. And those molecules become the active ingredients in our vaccines. So if I'm a bacteria, and this is one good protein we choose, and my nose is another good protein, and my ear is another good protein, we take the DNAs from those different components, put them together, and out comes a molecule with a hand and a nose and an ear. And the big benefits of this is that it creates a very, very safe vaccine. It has an excellent safety profile. It has other benefits as well. But our technology creates efficient and safe vaccines. So why are we so good at this? Why is Intervacc world leading or in the forefront of creating those type of vaccines? So our research teams at Karolinska and SLU, they have been in the forefront of these technologies driving this development for over 30 years. So they are experts in the proteins and the surface structures, especially on those two bacterial strains, Streptococcus and Staphylococcus, or types of bacteria. So together with this knowledge, and then our focus on using a technology of fusions of recombinant proteins, staying with those bacteria, Staphylococcus and Streptococcus, that is the reason why we are world leading, or one of the, in the forefront at least, of these type of vaccines. Then we have also over 30 years of experience with selling vaccines and work with animal health through Intervacc. So we're really playing in our home turf, and I think that's important when you're a small company and trying to stay in the lead. So that's the answer to why we're so good at this. So looking a little bit into then our development pipeline, because we are working with several interesting vaccine candidates. So we have first Strangles that I mentioned for horses, Streptococcus equi. And then we have worked with a project for Streptococcus suis in piglets. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. And Staphylococcus aureus, that is a bacteria that has problems for many different types of species and animals. But we're focusing first on dairy cows, where it leads to mastitis. So if we start by looking at Strangvac. So Strangles is the most frequently diagnosed infection disease in the equine world. So it's a serious problem. It's a really nasty disease. It's, if you talk to horse owners and Strangles, they really don't want it. It's highly contagious. And if you have an outbreak, it's very, very costly. Often because of, if it's just not one horse getting infected, the whole stable has to be sealed off or quarantined, and you have to prove that you don't have any infected horses and have to be cleared. So for the individual, depending on country, but for the individual horse owners, stable owners, this can have catastrophic effect, especially if you're a riding school or any kind of business where you're dependent on a lot of horses and continuous working with that to get your revenue. So it can have really devastating effects. I have just one recent example here. This is Andrew Harding, executive director in Hong Kong Jockey Club. So, and this is he's a little bit stressed here because he's commenting that there was those really expensive race horses that were bound for Hong Kong, and they came from New Zealand. They came up with Strangles, and they were stranded for over 7 months. That's super expensive. And if I quote him, Strangle is a worldwide endemic disease problem. Then he goes on. So it's a global problem. It's really serious for different actors that are working with horses. And today there's no real good solution or cure. So with Strangvac, we are targeting a global market. There are some 60 million horses in the world globally. And in our primary markets, we say there's about 20 million. So we have about 6 million in Europe, 10 million or 11 million in North America. We have another million in New Zealand, Australia, and then there's a couple of markets that we see as primary market. In those primary markets, about half, really different on geographies, are getting in some type of vaccination program today against some equine disease. So I think that's a really good target to have to get into those vaccination programs, and that Strangvac becomes one of the vaccines that are regularly used. So, and when talking about vaccines as a business, it's a horse enters into a vaccination program, and then it stays and have a regular revaccination. So it's from a business perspective, it's a recurring revenue. So it's a really nice way to build your customer base and grow that. And I think for Strangvac, we can grow this for many, many years. Europe and then North America and Oceania, but then there's 40 million horses outside of those regions where maybe the vaccination is not so frequently used today, but it will be. So I think there's a huge market and growth for a long period of time. And to reach this global market, we have our own sales teams in the Baltics, in the Nordics regions, where we can sell through our daughter company Nordvac. And then to reach a global market, we will use distribution partners. And the largest players control a big portion of those distribution channels. So at least for the major areas, that is the most likely scenario. And we are in discussions with a number of those global players within animal health, and they're very interested. Okay, it's a little bit about the summary here of where we are with Strangles. It has over 90% efficacy in clinical trials, and even for those horses that get infected, even if they're protected, the symptoms are much less, significantly reduced, which is also important. We have a minimum of 12-month memory cells, so an annual revaccination schedule is possible. There's no side effects. It's a super safe vaccine, which is also important when you work with horses that are competing and in regular training. They don't want to wait for a week. They want to be back on the track fast. It has an intramuscular administration, so a shot in the muscle, which is exactly what the veterinarian wants. And that's also very, very important. There are other ways to administrate vaccines, like administering in the lip. That's something that the horse really, really don't want. Or nasal administration, where you have to get it's really, really far up the horse's nose, which is also maybe okay the first time, but after a couple of times the horses learn and they don't like that either. So this is really the preferred way to administrate the vaccine. So we believe we have something very, very valuable here. And we're past preclinical and clinical phases. We are, as we communicated this summer, we have produced this active substance for a few million doses. So we are in the middle of that. We are working with a dossier, and we are on track to submit the dossier by the end of this year. So I think this is unique for a company our size and position. And EMA they have 210 days maximum they can work on this. Now the clock stops when they send back questions to us. So I think we expect that there will be questions, but the difficult questions are often around safety, and that is our strongest part. So we are planning for market launch in the end of 2020, pending the approval. Okay, so if we look then into our next vaccine project in lines, we have then a vaccine for piglets. It's caused by Staphylococcus suis. This is also a very serious disease, and it affects small piglets when they are after weaning. So and it's fatal, and this is something that pig farmers would really, really like, and because it's big production losses. The pig industry is really global. It's really large. It's 1 billion pigs and growing, and it's gotten a lot of attention lately because of this African swine flu disease. So there's opens up doors for us. They want treatment. They want vaccines. Something that's interesting when it comes to this market is that this Staphylococcus suis is a disease that can spread it affects humans, and it spreads via meat as well. So a scenario that could happen and that we should prepare for is that if you have an outbreak in a country, and this country and this becomes a public health issue in that country, and they say that all the pig farms in this country has to vaccinate. And then, 1 more minute, okay. And then, so in that case, it becomes important to separate vaccinated pigs from infected pigs. I'm going to speed up a little bit. Our next in line is Staphylococcus aureus, problem in the dairy industry, also a huge market. There are 250 million dairy cows in the world. And then we stop at the takeaway. So what I want you to remember after this presentation is that core animal health is a global growing $35 billion industry with a growth of 4-6%, 6-9% for vaccines. Vaccine is being prioritized in the fight against antibiotic resistance. We're in the absolute forefront when it comes to vaccine development and using recombinant fusion proteins. And our first commercial vaccine, Strangles, is on track for market launch in 2020. Thank you.
Proceed with some questions. So first of all, could you give us a description of the IP platform in terms of patents for your different solutions?
Sure. So I think we have now 21 or 22 patents registered, and another 3 patents that is that has been sent in and for approval. We have done a freedom of operate search for Strangles, and we have freedom of operate. So I think we have an active patent strategy, and we feel secure in this. I could also say that it's really difficult to copy vaccines like this. So we feel it's almost unheard of, especially in the animal health business. So I feel quite secure there.
Okay. Do you have you communicated the expiry dates of these patents as well? Or?
I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure actually. 2031.
2031.
Yeah, but the question was if we have communicated it.
Okay.
Not sure. I think
Thank
so.
You. So looking at the competitive landscape on the market today, could you describe a bit what the current treatment alternatives are and sort of the landscape there as well?
Sure. So there are vaccines against Strangles today. None of them have reached a global reach and a global market, and for good reasons. And without going too much into detail on different products, the problems are around safety. Some of those have been causing Strangvac. So if you have vaccinated, you have caused Strangles. And then the administration. One of them is administration in the lip, something the horse and the veterinarians really don't like. And one of them is administered with this nasal injection. So none of those have getting access to all the global markets. They have not been approved or they have not bothered. In Sweden, for example, none of those are available. So the playing field is quite open. There are local competition, but we feel that this is a superior product.
So in the recent quarterly report, you announced that you've completed the production of quite a large scale sort of the antigens for the vaccine. Could you describe a bit what's the importance of that piece of news?
Okay, so I think the importance is that in this production, we have to do those commercial batches for the registration process. And the difficulty here is the first part, producing those antigens, the active ingredients, those molecules I talked about. And that is completed, and we went public with that. So we have produced those antigens for a few million doses. What remains now is to put those into the other components in the vaccine and to then bottle it. And we will do that in 2 batches with 30,000 vials in each batch. So I think, and I mean, we are in the forefront of this. And I think a few years ago, this wasn't so easy. And this is one of the reasons it's taking time. Now the technology is ready, and we have done it, and we had excellent results, and I think that's worth noting.
Perfect. So a final question. You mentioned there that you're on track for a market launch in the end of 2020. So that will begin in Europe.
Yes.
So could you describe your plans for future global launch as well, and where?
Sure. So we have to also file for registration for other markets, and for some markets follow closely what happens in Europe, and what we have filed in Europe will be beneficial for us. For markets like in the US, for example, They also rely on that data, but it's good to do with a partner, so it goes faster and easier. And that's our intention. So we will do that, start that as soon as we have filed for registration in EMA. That process we will start working on.
Perfect. So thank you very much, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.